Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review for Star Trek Prodigy Season 1 Episode 14, Crossroads. This video is part of a series of videos where I review episodes of Prodigy, so I have to start with the spoiler warning for Prodigy up to Season 1. Episode 14. If you haven't seen up to this point, you will not want to watch this video, otherwise some things will be spoiled for you. So, first of all, that's my cat Holden behind me, and you may hear a lot of beeping sounds and rustling. That is Naomi, who is down on the floor playing with her toys, being very active, so I have to apologize in advance for any background noise you might hear. So, anyway, let me get into this episode. So, alright, so here's the thing about this episode. It was great seeing, like, the Xindi. They're in a Xindi world. This is the first appearance we got of the Xindi since Enterprise. This is the first appearance of the Xindi outside of Enterprise, and therefore the first appearance of the Xindi in a more modern time setting, rather in the 22nd century, I believe Enterprise is taking place in. So here we see them in the late 24th century. So that was cool, and it doesn't seem like they're a part of the Federation. I mean, they could be, maybe, but it doesn't seem like it. I know that Daniel said they eventually became a part of the Federation, but I believe that was like either the 25th or 26th century. So it's, completely plausible that by the end, towards the end of the 24th century, they're still not part of the Federation. So I'm fine with that either way. I'm just, nerding out at this sort of appearance. And I'm sure we saw some more aliens in the background that I didn't quite catch. There were probably other Easter eggs. But it actually took me a while to realize that these were the reptilian Xindi. In particular, the reptilians. So I guess they eventually made peace with them because they're not at hostilities with the Federation. At least everyone's chilling out on their outposts and doing trade. And apparently it's a low key, like a junkyard. Jacob called it. And then there's the outrageous Okana appeared in this episode, and I don't care about that and I knew he was going to appear. In fact, I heard about that he was going to appear in Prodigy before Prodigy even aired. So I knew this was coming, and I don't really care because I hated that episode. I hated that character. I don't hate to see him. Like, he didn't, piss me off that, when I first heard he was going to be in Prodigy, I'm like, why? Like, of all the characters you're going to bring back, why the hell would you bring this guy back? But, I don't mind him. I kind of would, if anyone who's seen Star Wars, The Clone Wars, or Star Wars Rebels, I would relate him to, Hondo, which is a character I really did not like in Clone Wars, and then they brought him back for Rebels, and eventually I just got used to him. I was like, fine, whatever, he's just this, pirate smuggler type. And then Holden went away. Anyway, he was just a pirate smuggler type. So whatever, and I got used to him, and I can kind of feel the same way about Okana because he wasn't annoying in this episode, so that's fine. Now, I'm kind of purposely, skating around the point, so let me get to the point of this episode and what I felt about this episode. I found this episode incredibly frustrating to watch. And in my humble opinion, and I know not everyone's going to agree with me, but in my humble opinion, this episode was incredibly contrived, and it pissed me off. So, what do I mean by that? Well, so I was liking this episode at first, and I was really excited at first because they hit the protostar, they went to this outpost to try to find Starfleet, and then we find out that this outpost they went to, in fact, is the same one that scientist from the destroyed, the Denobulan from the destroyed space station went to, and we do find out, this episode confirms that he is a terrible Starfleet officer, which makes me feel a bit better about his reaction in the episode he appeared in, because, and why he was like sent you to this remote outpost that nobody wanted to be in. But how remote is the outpost that they're able to get to this, or the science station that he was at, if they're able to go to this Xindi trade station in the shuttle pod? But whatever, I've already talked about logistics and Prodigy not making sense, and it kind of, makes my blood boil when people try to make excuses for it. No, it's the same thing with Game of Thrones. People try to make excuses for how the travel times were fine, which they were not, and so they have the same issue in Prodigy. But you gotta get it with the umbrella that it's a kids show, and I know it's a kids show, but it still kind of irritates me. I wish they would work better with travel times. And at the end of the episode, they go to the neutral. So now, granted, they were activating the slipstream drive, so they could have traveled a very far distance to get to the neutral zone. So that I don't really have an issue with. I more have the issue with how there was that shuttle escape pod was able to get to a Xindi outpost. And I don't know. You could say that, maybe the Xindi outpost is in the far reaches of the Beta Quadrant. Which, okay, I can kind of sort of buy that, I guess. But I know Enterprise took like months and months to get to the Xindi, but still, they were able to get there in the 22nd century, so how far could it be? Or maybe the Xindi traveled more. This is a remote outpost for the Xindi, but then you have all these traders. I don't know. Anyway, it's not like it's completely terrible and often I don't buy it, like the episode in the first season with that Ferengi woman. That one was like just totally off. But this one you could make excuses for, but they're stretching it. That's all I'm saying. They're stretching the geography for it. But anywho, so yes, so the point, that's not what I find frustrating about this episode, by the way. I'm kind of going off on a tangent. What I find frustrating about this episode, okay, so they go to this outpost and they try to find Starfleet. They do find Starfleet. Gwen runs into that ensign. And the ensign recognizes Gwen as the Diviner's, I remembered his name this time, the Diviner's daughter that he was looking for. And then Jacob Pog runs into that Tellarite, and they kind of yell at each other for being Tellarites, and he says that he's a runt. I actually find that kind of funny. And then Dahl runs into Admiral Janeway and, of course, recognizes her and has a little short conversation with her. Now, after they all bump into their various people, the Admiral Janeway talks to Noblin, who rats them out and says they're the savages that destroyed my station. And so Janeway wants to, talk to them, wants to apprehend them so she can find out what's going on. And then they all of the, our little main group meet back up with each other. And Rob Top says the one thing that I was thinking throughout this entire sequence, and that is, why didn't you? So all of you ran into Starfleet and no one bothered to mention the fact that there's a weapon that could destroy them. I was like, thank you, Rocktop, thank you. Like, why the hell didn't you do it? And then Zero has this lame response, which I believe is coming direct. In my mind, I picture it coming directly from the writers, and I don't buy it. Is, who's gonna listen to fugitives? No. So, to get to my point, why I find this episode so frustrating is because I think it's contrived writing that none of these people who ran into Starfleet would just tell them the truth. When Gwen ran into the ensign and she's like, I know your father, she should be like, my father is the one who captured the protostar in the first place, and he created a weapon to destroy Starfleet, so if you go anywhere near the protostar, it will be destroyed. Now, maybe the ensign wouldn't believe Gwen right away, but at least they would have these two competing narratives, and it would make Starfleet kind of reconsider. Now, maybe they would capture the group and arrest them, but then maybe they would, after hearing their story more, they would be more on board. Like Zero's thing about, oh, they're fugitive. They're not really fugitives. They weren't fugitives. Janeway wasn't aware of their existence until the Denobulan said that. And so they're just going, she would have these conflicting stories from the Denobulan, but once she talked more to the Protostar crew, those inconsistencies would sort of line up, and she could see where the Denobulan, and especially see how terrible an officer he is, she could see where he was mistaken, and things would sort of start to line up. Also, so when what's his face, Jacob Pod ran into Telluride, that one I didn't really have any issues with, because he was kind of preoccupied with being in Telluride and being called up run, so that actually was fine. But when Dahl ran into Admiral Janeway, he was like being, oh, I don't want to say, he was being all nervous and everything. He should have just blurted it out. Now, I can hear the excuses already that people will say, oh, he was nervous, he didn't know how to say it. And, okay, fine, but when they brought in Denobulan the scientist, he ran away. He shouldn't have run away. He should have stayed there, confronted the scientist, and be like, no, this is what happened. There's a weapon on board our ship that destroyed the station. We tried, we didn't know about it, and that's why we're running away from Starfleet. He should have said that. He should have done that. And then they proceed to run away from Starfleet, get into this like chase with these, hovercraft or whatever. And by the way, they destroy one of the hovercrafts. They killed some people. Now, you could say, oh, maybe the Xindi jumped off before the hovercraft destroyed, but really? Now they are fugitives. Like, and again, I can hear some excuses of people in my head. Maybe some people will say in the comments of being like, oh, well, they're just kids. They're just making mistakes. They don't really know how to function. This is their own fault. I don't buy it. I don't buy that they would do this. To me, this screams of contrived writing. Is that the reason why this is happening this way is because the writers do not want our group to meet up with Janeway yet. They don't want them to be like held in the brig on Janeway's ship. They would rather have this chase scene and then prolong it and have the Protostar have to run off to the neutral zone and run away from. And by the way, this is the action they took was the dumbest action they could even take. Like, I think Rocktop really is the only smart one here. Like, I felt like she was speaking for me. And when she was like, we can't lead them to the Protostar. And that's exactly what they fucking did. They did the last thing they should do. They ran away, which actually made them look more guilty. And they led them right to the Protostar and made a very, very strong possibility that the weapon would destroy Janeway's ship. Like, they put Janeway's whole crew and life in danger because they're idiots, because they wouldn't just speak up. And at the point when they were on the Protostar and Janeway tried to hail them, and he's like, no, don't respond, because that would destroy Janeway's ship. Well, you had your chance to explain yourself, to respond to them on the planet. And instead, you decided to just run away instead of just flat out saying, and I think Gwen and Alva honestly is most guilty of this. She should have just flat out said, my father's the one who captured the Protostar in the first place. He's the one who knows where you're missing Captain Oak. I don't think she knew about that yet, but she should have went back and told them. Like, for them running away and going right to the Protostar was the dumbest move they could have had. And it made me lose, like, any respect for these characters. But again, more to the point, I can recognize this as very bad, very contrived writing, because they want certain things to happen, so they have to have the characters act out of character and act like total morons in order to achieve this. And one thing I did want to add is one of the main reasons why I don't buy this as motivation for these characters that they would behave this way is that they should trust Starfleet. The whole storyline has been building up for having all this respect for Starfleet, wanting to be a part of Starfleet. Therefore, they should have trusted Starfleet with the truth. And I'm sure that's what Hologram Janeway would have told them. Would have been like, why you should have just trusted them. You should have just gave them the information and trusted Starfleet would have come to the right conclusion. It feels like this is what like the last season of Lower Decks was trying to tell us, that people should just try to trust Starfleet. Now again, the counter argument could be, oh, these are just kids, they haven't dealt with Starfleet before, maybe they didn't want to trust them. But I don't buy that for the development. I don't buy that for the characters. They should have, and their whole mission was to go out and tell Starfleet about the protostar. So why didn't they complete this mission? And so this is the only thing so this is why I found this episode so frustrating. And it's actually going to be hard. I think this might have damaged my enjoyment of the show overall, to be honest. And again, I can hear the comments of people thinking I'm being silly and responding this way to a kid's show. And look, if there are kids who still enjoy this show and still like this show, I'm not going to, that's fine. They can do that. The purpose of these reviews are for me to explain my opinion of this show and how I watch it. And besides the fact, they do market this show as a show for all ages, not just kids. It's a family show, not a kids show. So I'll correct you on that one. Adults are also supposed to be able to enjoy this, and purposely so, because they purposely put in tons of references that adult Star Trek fans would recognize and love, such as we see, I think we even saw Kazon in this episode, if I remember, and we see the Xindi, and they talk about Tellarides and all that. So don't give me that, oh, this isn't for you, this is a kid's show and you're just an adult, like, trying to talk about a kid's show. No. It's a family show. It's meant for all ages. So don't give me that. But anyway, yeah. So, but if anyone there watching this disagrees with me and they take enjoyment out of the show, then that's fine. That's great. Good for you. I'm actually kind of happy. I'm kind of jealous because now I feel like this show is kind of ruined for me. Honestly, it's gonna be hard for me to follow, like, because I know whatever storyline comes next is gonna be really contrived and shouldn't happen, because they should have just told them flat out what was going on. They should have just said it. They should have just yeah. And so I'm actually kind of enraged by this episode, to be honest. So, my rating for Crossroads out of 10, I'm going to give this a 5 average. And let me be clear, that 5 is a very, very generous rating. I wanted to give this episode like a 1 or a 2. Because I think it ruins the entire show. But there were things I liked about it. I liked seeing the Xindi. I liked that it had that suspense, that engagement of them actually encountering Admiral Janeway. It was cool to finally see that. So I will be fair and give this episode a 5. But I can't give it anything higher than that. And the fact, I'm being very generous by giving it a rating that high. Because this episode pretty much single-handedly ruined the entire show for me. I don't know. Maybe the show will come back from this. Maybe eventually they'll move on to other things and I'll be able to. But there will always be that thing in my back of my mind that all the story that happens from this point onward shouldn't happen, and it was just contrived writing. Anyway, so bear that in mind for my future reviews of Prodigy, because I'm not going to let this go. And as I said, if this doesn't bother you, then that's fine. That's great. But it bothers me, and the whole point of my review is to talk about how I feel about Prodigy. But anyway, that's it for my review of this latest episode of Prodigy, and if this video did not upset you or piss you off, thanks so much for watching, and be sure to subscribe so you can see more Star Trek content, as I cover a lot of covering the original series at the moment, episode by episode, and all sorts of other Star Trek content and videos on many other shows as well. So be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that, and thanks a lot for watching.